Welcome to the Apple Insider Podcast. This is a special episode with guest Christopher Lawley. He's got a YouTube channel where he talks about lots of iPad stuff. That's kind of his big focus. Almost 150,000 subscribers. Really makes excellent content and has great productivity and creativity tips when it comes to iPad. So, Chris, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm not entirely sure. Hopefully I can live up to that intro. We'll see, but no. Hopefully I can live up to it.
You know, I will say I just was on your YouTube channel and I sorted to the oldest videos.
Oh, no.
No,
nobody should do that. No.
They're still there. So it looks like you started the channel in 2015, but really about 5 years ago, really started making the concerted effort. And you've come a long way, man. I mean, your videos are super high quality. I always watch when I see one of yours pop up in the feed. So you do incredible work, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, not all of the older videos are still up. I probably should go clean up that list. But yeah, I've been doing it. I think I truly started in 2016, but I had some things here and there in 2015. But yeah,
sure.
Thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, what is the story behind your website domain? Because it's theuntitled.site is your website.
Can I curse on this podcast? No, right?
I'll probably bleep it out. I mean, you can curse as we record.
So originally it was called Random what it was originally called.
Okay, very good.
My roommate at the time was like, you probably shouldn't call it that. And I was like, why? It'd be funny. People are going to like laugh. Like it'll be like one of those things people will definitely say on podcasts. And then she was like, no, people are going to bleep it on podcasts and nobody will ever hear it. And I was like, oh, okay. Yep, that's right. So I was at my IT job at the time. I was working on a Windows computer and I opened up Notepad and I was saving a document, and the default title in Notepad, along with every other thing, was untitled.txt. And I was like, Untitled? Huh. I wonder if the untitledsite.com was available. And it was. And then now it's just the untitled.site because that's less to type.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody goes to YouTube. You know, that's your main deal.
So I started blogging before I did YouTube stuff, and I realized I was a terrible writer. So I don't really write anymore. The website is more of just like hey, I can put all my links to all the stuff that I do at one place, so I don't have to list 50 different things, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
When people are like, hey, what do you do?
And now you're like all in on iPad, it seems. And I won't talk about that, but what was your entry into the Apple world? Was it the iPad, or did you start with a Mac or iPod or what?
No. We've got to go entry into the Apple world. Well, very first entry was the very first iPod Nano, which would have been my freshman year of high school, which, who knows when that is. It was a long, long time ago.
It was probably after me.
Whenever the first gen iPod Nano came out, because I got it came out right around my birthday, and I got it as a birthday present. That was my first true Apple product. And the iPods were the fashionable thing. It was very much like, hey, this is the fashionable thing to have. I didn't really start getting into Apple and like Macs and like the technology behind everything until I was a junior in high school. Where I live, we have this kind of, it's kind of hard to explain because literally nowhere else in the world, they're the first of their kind. I mean, maybe now there might be others like it, but basically I had a traditional high school experience my freshman and sophomore year. Junior and senior year, I went to two different schools. One of the schools was called CART, Center for Advanced Research and Technology. Can't believe I still remember it. It's basically like college prep stuff, but you do hands-on things. Well, I wanted to go to film school college, but I ended up doing film stuff there, and we had PCs mostly to work with. And then like halfway through my junior year there, they brought in a couple of iMacs and a Mac Pro, and I was already on track to move in like I had been selected to be in the small advanced group my senior year. So my film teacher, he was like, you really should use a Mac, like it's the industry thing. And I was big PC boy at the time. I built my own computers. I was PC gamer boy. I didn't want anything to do with the Mac, and I was like, I don't want it. He was like, I'm gonna make you use Final Cut. And this was Final Cut 7 at the time. This was before they did the big skip 8, 9 and jump to 10. So I just used it, and I was like, hey, this isn't too bad. I like this. The screen's really nice. The computers are fast compared to the PCs that we had there.
Right.
And I got the Mac Pro my junior year. So I was like, oh, this thing's great. This thing's fantastic.
Now that would have been cheese grater, like 2007 model.
It would have been the cheese grater 2007 model, and that one had whatever the 24-inch display was.
The Apple Cinema display.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked amazing. It looked beautiful. But the thing was smoking fast compared to everything else we had. I mean, it still had a spinning hard drive, so it wasn't like that fast. But it was fast compared to everything else that we were using. So that was kind of like what got me hooked. And then I got my first, I essentially had a Mac assigned to me throughout that time. But I got my first Mac as a graduation present. And when I graduated in 2009, I got the 2009 MacBook Pro. I can almost recite the specs because I memorized it. It was a 15.6-inch display. It had. I ordered a refurbed one. Always order refurb, people, because you can get the same model, or most of the time you can get the same model as the current one out. But sometimes, if you're lucky like me, poor high school student, I ordered a 250 gig hard drive.
Right.
Got a 321, but this was when you could replace hard drives. So a couple years later, I put an SSD in it, and then I think I got 2 gigs or 4 gigs of RAM. We put 8. Yeah, it was an awesome computer.
Was this the unibody?
Yes, it was the first unibody one, I think. I believe.
Exactly.
Because one of the things I didn't get it right when I graduated. I think I waited a little bit because there was rumors of the unibody one coming or something. I don't remember exactly. I know I didn't get it right away because I knew something was coming.
Well, and the unibody came out October 2008, and the reason why I remember is I had a 12-inch G4 PowerBook personally that I used through college, and my first job was about to buy me a MacBook, and it was September of that year, and I bought the 15-inch MacBook Pro. The company got it for me. It was amazing. But then the very next month, the unibody major redesign came out, and I was like, I just needed to wait one more month.
Yep.
But that was a huge design and hardware upgrade. So that was a good start.
Well, it's funny you say that. I literally had to buy an iPhone last night because nothing like having to buy an iPhone in August. So I totally know how you feel right now.
Wait. Did you break your current one or what happened?
No. I had to send back my review unit. So it's nothing bad. I just needed to send it back. Sure. And I was like, okay, what is the thing that I could buy that I would be happy with? But also, what's the thing that I could turn around and sell in September and still get most of my money back?
For sure.
And I was like, well, that's going to be the 13 Pro Max. So I was like,
You get the green one?
Yeah, I got the green one because I was like, why not? Yeah. Nobody else has it.
I know. I so wish I would have gotten the green one if it was available at launch.
It's such a better color than the blue one. The blue one was my review unit one, and I hate the baby blue one. 12 Pro Max, the Pacific Blue, best color, best looking iPhone ever. Hands down. I will not take any questions about that. It is. You have to agree with me.
It was very good. And I missed it. I bought a black one that year, and I missed the blue. And then when the 13s came out, I was like, I'm getting the blue because I missed it last year. And that's what I have, is the Sierra blue. And it's like, it's all right. But I totally would have gotten the green one. And Apple's marketing team 100% knew what they were doing to wait halfway through the year. Because it almost got me to do a mid-cycle upgrade. But I was like, can't do that.
I mean, it's not even a mid-cycle. I'm literally an 11-month upgrade. I'm like, can't believe I have to buy this thing, but I get it.
So you did start on the Mac. You were doing Final Cut 7.
Yeah.
And now, from what I can tell on your YouTube channel, you're doing all iPad. You edit your videos in LumaFusion on iPad. So when did that transition happen?
Well, when LumaFusion came out, a couple months after it came out, I found it. It didn't make a splash at all. It was a very quiet launch. It was one of those things. Right. I had my ear to the ground for a true video editor on the iPad ever since the iPad Pro was announced. I got the first iPad Pro almost right away, and I kept my ear to the ground. And there was iMovie, and there was some from Pinnacle, and it just wasn't what I needed because I love the iPad and I wanted to go all in on it. So a couple months after LumaFusion came out, I found it and I started using it, and I was like, you know what? For my basic needs, this works. So I'll use it. And I went all in on it because I was like, I want to be the guy on YouTube that doesn't just say he uses the iPad, that actually uses the iPad for everything. So I went all in on it. Right. And then I had an IT job at the time that I definitely couldn't have used the iPad for, just because like they weren't going to let me use my personal computer for it. Luckily, I ended up leaving that job, and I got a job where I got to make the rules, and I was like, hey, I get to use whatever computer I want. So I was even using the iPad for IT stuff, editing video alongside that. Then October of last year, actually pretty much all of last year, I started having serious issues with LumaFusion. Serious bugs. I wasn't able to export a couple of videos. I was having some major crashes. And then October last year, the new MacBook Pros were announced. And I was like, and I was talking to, I had a group of friends, and I was talking to them. I'm like, I am having so many issues. I wasn't able to get my iPhone 13 video out in time. I literally got the iPhone 13 video out, I think a day before the MacBook Pro embargo dropped. So by that time, nobody cared. So I was like, I'm having so many issues. I can't keep dealing with this. So I ended up ordering a MacBook Pro, and I got it in December of 2021. So since December of 2021, I have been editing everything in Final Cut.
Okay.
That being said, I have been testing LumaFusion again with iPadOS 16, because I know one of the major issues I was having is it was just running out of RAM. It had the app intent that allowed it to use up to 12 gigs of RAM. Still wasn't quite good enough. Now it can use up to 16 gigs of RAM. I can see the difference. There is a significant difference. There's still some issues, but that could just be a test to the fact that iPadOS 16 is in beta currently. You know, it's August 3rd right now. And so it's a little buggy there. What I'm hoping for, and if you'll allow me to put on my conspiracy theory hat for a minute.
Okay, please do. I'm going to get tinfoil hat, yeah.
Last year, we had the M1 iPad Pros announced.
That's right.
Okay, makes sense. The M1 chip, everyone kind of freaked out about it, but let's just be honest. It's just the X version of the A14. I can't keep track of all the numbers anymore. Anyway,
yes,
it's just the
A14.
X version that would have normally have gone into the iPad with extra RAM and stuff. Okay, cool. Still a lot of power, but we have this really nice display on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, the XDR display. It's the mini LED display. Apple's
mini
marketing
LED,
terms, I used to memorize them all. Now I just don't care. I'm like, you know what? It's a mini LED display. Everyone knows it. We're just gonna call it that. I can't memorize all these marketing terms anymore.
Liquid Retina, XDR, and all that.
It's like it's too much. Too much. Beautiful display, has Thunderbolt, has all this stuff in it that hardware-wise, I'm like, you know, this is all stuff video editors would need. Then iPadOS 15 came out. Nothing too special was there. It's a little, you know.
They revolutionized multitasking in iPadOS 15. You don't remember that?
It really didn't change though. I mean,
they just put the three dots at every
dot button
window,
at the top, and then there was the dock. Or I'm sorry, not the dock, but shelf.
The shelf, where you could do multiple windows and such. That was it.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I was still using drag and drop.
I'm hoping our listeners saw the tongue in my cheek, but I don't know if they'll see that while they listen. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, so we got the iPad Air with the M1 chip in there in the meantime. The faster USB-C port, which again got me to raise my eyebrows.
Sure.
Yeah, something's definitely coming. iPadOS 16 comes. Boom, we all know. We have Stage Manager. We have Virtual Memory Swap. We have Reference Mode. We have all these features that I'm like, these are features you would really need if you're doing pro software.
Right. They even said pro desktop class apps during the keynote.
Desktop class features is another thing.
Yeah.
I'm putting my knife in the ground right now, or I did back in June, that in a 12-month period between now and the next WWDC, we will see Final Cut for the iPad. I'm calling it now.
Oh,
I don't know what I'll do if I don't get that right. I'm not going to retire. I don't know what I'll do, but I will be shocked, I say, if we don't have at least some sort of reveal announcement of like, hey, this thing's coming.
Yeah.
My theory, and like I was sitting there at WWDC because I actually got lucky enough to be invited, and that was awesome. That was amazing. First Apple event I've ever been to.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was sitting there in the crowd, and I'm like, yes, there's still more to come. And I was like, they announced Freeform early. I will give them this. They announced Freeform, the app, early, which is interesting. But oh boy, do I feel like there is a surprise in store for us come fall, maybe the spring for Final Cut on the iPad, which is like the only thing I need to get rid of the Mac. Like I like the Mac.
Really?
It's fine. I mean, I'm sitting on a Mac right now because I figured it would be more stable for the way we're recording this podcast.
Sure.
I would probably still keep a desktop Mac around, but I wouldn't also have a 14-inch MacBook Pro and an iPad Pro. I hate that. I hate that I have both those.
So that was my question is, if you could go all iPad, would you? And you just said you would.
Oh, 100%.
I still use both. I actually got a Mac Studio, which I absolutely love because I like having a desktop computer that's just sitting there all the time. You know, and I don't have to worry about battery or anything.
Yeah.
But the iPad for me is special because I edit all podcasts on my iPad with Ferrite.
Nice.
And using the Apple Pencil and iPad, that's such a unique and fast experience for me that I just love doing it on there. But you like iPadOS enough where you would totally go all in and your iPad would be your main computer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's one hardware thing that would kind of keep me back, and I'm probably the only person on the planet that would complain about this, is that the iPad only goes up to 2 terabytes of storage. And we've already seen the M2 chip, and we know that it maxes out at 2 terabytes of storage. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I have 4 terabytes on my MacBook Pro, and when I have a bunch of video projects, I absolutely use that space. Like, that is 100% something I would use. So I think what I would end up doing is I have an M1 Mac Mini underneath my desk that acts as an automation server.
Right.
If Final Cut comes to the iPad, what my plan today is, Final Cut comes to the iPad and it can do most of the stuff I want it to do. Like it works, you know, the way I want it to work, which I assume it
80% of what desktop Final Cut can do.
Yeah, exactly. There's some high-end stuff that desktop Final Cut can do that I don't need. So like if I'm not saying it needs to be one-to-one at all. That comes to the iPad, I will sell my MacBook Pro, I will sell my Mac Mini, I will get a Mac Studio, and have that as like my always-on automation machine, but as kind of also as like a backup workspace machine. So like I have a lot of really big projects that I work on throughout the year, one of which I'm working on right now. I do a big iPadOS walkthrough every year that just like covers everything that's in iPadOS, all the features, what it means for iPad users, and that project can get quite big. And especially with my new camera setup, those files are going to be absolutely huge this year. So I wouldn't want to keep that on my iPad, and I don't know if that's a big project like that is something I would want to work on an iPad when I could get a machine with higher performance threshold, you know, more GPU cores, more CPU cores, all that stuff. So that's kind of my thought process right now, but the iPad would be like my main computer. And I mean, it is right now. It's when I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, it's time to go do work. I grab my iPad unless it's video editing. Right. Video editing is where I have to grab a MacBook Pro.
I will concur with your conspiracy because I was thinking about the next iPad. Obviously, there'll be an M2 iPad Pro at some point, you know, in the next 6 months, I think. I think fall might be likely because it'll be on that 18-month cycle already.
Yeah.
But if it is announced, I'd be curious your thoughts. I don't know what hardware additions or features Apple could put into an M2 iPad besides the chip. You know, they could bring the XDR to the 11-inch.
Yeah.
That would be nice. They're not going to add any more ports. We're not going to get an SD card slot on the iPad. It already has 5G data. So I'm not sure, besides the M2 chip itself, what updates on maybe Apple Pencil Gen 3. But if they announce the M2 iPad Pro, it makes sense for them to announce Final Cut Pro as well. Hopefully they don't make it just M2. Hopefully it would be M1 or M2 iPad.
I don't think they would.
Yeah, hopefully not. But what could they, besides Final Cut, which I think would be likely in that kind of event, what else would the iPad gain? Or what else would you hope the hardware of iPad could gain in the next model?
Well, there's my realistic expectations, and then there are my fantasy expectations.
Pie in the sky, yeah.
Honestly, it could just be a quiet update. It could just be like, hey, here's the M2 chip. The 11-inch gets the good display, which would be helpful to help differentiate it from the iPad Air, which is something I think really needs. Like for a while there after the iPad Air came out, I just used the iPad Air up until like a couple weeks before WWDC, and I had something come up that I was like, okay, I need the bigger iPad for it now.
Sure.
But like the iPad Air is a great machine. So the 11-inch could use some help differentiating it. The M2 chip is obvious. I would love it if I could get one with 24 gigs of RAM. That would be fantastic. I will never complain about extra RAM. If they wanted to make a special model just for me that had 4 terabytes of storage, Apple, I won't complain. You'll make me very happy, but I don't think you'll do that. I don't know if the M2 chip could handle that. So the other thing is OLED display would be really nice. that would be cool. There's not a whole lot, like, realistically that I would expect to see from this year. I don't even know, like, what they would do with a 3rd-gen Apple Pencil other than, like, an eraser side.
Flip it around and use the eraser.
Yeah, but that's something people have been asking for since the first one, and they didn't do it with the second one. So I kind of think like their answer to that is the double tap feature, which I know some people like, some people don't. I don't really mind it either way. I leave it enabled.
Yeah, I leave it enabled. I don't use it often. Now, Kirsten from the K Digital Studios YouTube channel, she would love if Apple made a 15-inch or even larger iPad. Would you be all about bigger screen?
That's what I was getting to. So that's kind of my pie in the sky one. I don't expect to see something like that this year. I know there are rumors that there are bigger iPads in the work. I would love a 15-inch iPad. If there was a 15-inch iPad, I would be ecstatic.
Yeah.
Because the 12.9-inch is fine, but it can be a little cramped when working on big creative projects. So I would like something a little big, more space. And if they were to bring Final Cut to the iPad, I would definitely appreciate that more space, because I have a 14-inch MacBook Pro right now, and I hate editing on the laptop screen because it's a little too cramped. I should have went with the 16-inch one, but I cheaped out. And I was like, I want to keep it light and fluffy, and it just did not work out for that. So I would love a bigger iPad. The thing I would ultimately love, and this is like futuristic, folding iPad. An iPad Pro that could fold up. I'm talking Westworld.
You want a Surface Duo iPad.
That's actually good.
That's actually
I want one that's like an iPad mini-ish thing, and I can open up and it's an iPad Pro. Because there's a lot of times I have an iPad mini. Oh, it's right behind me. It's charging. I have an iPad mini I use for reading and stuff like that, and then I have my iPad Pro for work. And what I hate is stuff doesn't sync between it. I'm always trying new apps and stuff like that. So it's already annoying when I try a new app. I have to set it up on my iPad, iPhone, and Mac. I don't want to have to go set it up on another iPad. So like if I had like a folding iPad and then like let me fold it out and put it in the Magic Keyboard or something, this is totally pie in the sky, fantasy realm, like 5 years down the road kind of thing. But I would love that kind of thing. And I honestly think Apple would do it at some point if they could do it right and do it well.
This episode is sponsored by Kolide. If you're considering a third-party IT audit like SOC2, then you should be prepared to answer tough questions about endpoint security. Auditors want to know that you have a system in place to monitor and maintain compliance across your fleet, which means showing that your employees are using things like disk encryption, screen lock, and password managers. If you're not quite sure how to go about proving all that, well then you need Kolide. Kolide is an endpoint security tool for Mac, Windows, and Linux devices that does things MDMs can't and gives you the visibility you need to meet your third-party and internal compliance goals. Best of all, Kolide doesn't resort to surveilling employees or locking down devices. Instead, it works with end users to resolve issues and relies on their cooperation and informed consent. You can meet your security goals and pass your audit without compromising on privacy. Visit kolide.com/AppleInsider to find out how. And if you follow that link, they'll hook you up with a goodie bag of free stuff just for activating a free trial. That's KOLIDE.com/AppleInsider. Kolide.com/AppleInsider. Our thanks to Kolide for sponsoring this episode. I was going to ask you about the iPad mini next because I have one. I really like it. I was editing all my podcasts on the mini because it's so light.
Oh, wow.
You know, holding an iPad, especially the 12.9 inch for a long period of time gets cumbersome. And I like editing my podcast just sitting on a sofa. And so the mini was great for it. But eventually, I think the lack of ProMotion and weird display things got to me. Like even the weather widget on the iPad mini is still broken. Like there's things that overlap each other.
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like Apple still hasn't gotten that iPad OS on the mini right just yet.
I expect this might be the last mini update.
Oh, no.
So I like the mini. Don't get me wrong. I like the mini.
Yeah.
But there's rumors of a folding iPhone coming.
Sure.
And I think that will eat the lunch of the iPad mini. And I think Stage Manager is truly the future of the iPad. I honestly... Apple is very proud of Stage Manager. You can just hear it in the way they talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think it is really good. I do not think it's a conspiracy theory that they're trying to like sell more iPads. I truly think they want this to be the future of the iPad. And if they could bring it to all the iPads that supported iPadOS 16, I think they would, because right now it's optional. but I definitely see a day where, the M1 iPad Pros or the M1 iPads are the bottom level of what iPad OS can support.
Right.
And that's when Stage Manager ceases to be optional. It's, hey, this is the future. This is what's going forward.
Yeah.
And I cannot see Stage Manager working well on an iPad mini size screen. It's just
That's true.
too cramped.
Now, it's interesting because I watched your maximalist iPad desk setup, and I know you have a studio display, and you hooked up your iPad to it. I mean, you're doing like full-on iPad deal. And most Stage Manager reactions have been pretty tepid.
Oh, yeah.
But you seem all into it. So how is Stage Manager with your iPad and the studio display? And how does that work? Does it actually find Stage Manager to be useful like that?
Stage Manager is incredibly useful. I'm going to say something that makes some people mad.
Please do.
Some hot gossip here. Look, there are people on the internet that use certain things for about 5 minutes and then make a 20-minute video on them. I'm shrugging right now. I'm just realizing this is an audio podcast and I'm shrugging. But I live and breathe and work off the iPad. I am not joking when I say, look, Apple has tried a lot of different iterations of multitasking. And some of those iterations have kind of worked, some of them not so much. I liked, I didn't hate the previous iteration of multitasking where it was a lot of dragging and dropping and stuff like that, but I understood that it wasn't something that was discoverable for people, so that's why they added the 3-dot menu. And I think that 3-dot menu has gotten really good in iPadOS 16. When I say Stage Manager is the future of the iPad, I truly believe it. The windowing and the way I can work with the iPad now is so much quicker. The fact that I can have multiple apps open in a space and, reference stuff. I get a ton of PDF documents. I get a ton of web pages I need to go over, app documentation. I have stuff that I have to pull from all the time. And the fact that I can jump between these documents while writing notes or writing a script is just so fast. It's such a game-changing feature. I love the spaces, the stages that they have, and that you can jump through them. So, I have a stage for my writing stuff. I have a stage for, communication and discourse kind of stuff. And, I have another for editing videos and editing photos and stuff like that. I truly believe this is the future. Does it need to be tweaked a little bit? Yes, absolutely. It is not perfect by any means. This is a very much a base that they can work off of. But I think this is the truest base of that the iPad multitasking has had, that absolutely gets it. I understand some people don't like it. I would say give it more time. Because it's truly, I truly believe in Stage Manager. And I don't even work for Apple. I'm not on the team. If it didn't work, I would tell you it didn't work. I don't care. It's no skin off my back.
Right. Do you think using it with an external display makes a big difference?
Yes, 100%. Especially if you're doing stuff with a lot of documents open and stuff like that. Having that extra space allows you to reference those extra documents. It just makes more sense. I know some people are doing the thing where you keep Stage Manager off on the iPad, but are using Stage Manager on the external display. So that way it's kind of like a more traditional iPad on the side. And then you have your windowing and stuff on the monitor. That's fine, but I'm all in on the windowing. It's buggy right now. It's in beta. We're in beta 4 right now, developer beta 4. So I'm hoping it gets smoothed out. There are definitely improvements that needs to be made, but they are making those improvements. And we've already seen that over the beta. So one of the things that they've improved is on the stages on the left-hand side, that column, you can click on the app icons to see the other windows, the other
groupings.
Yeah, well, no, you could say, so if I have Safari over there, I can click on the Safari icon and it'll show me all my Safari windows that I have. So that's nice. So you can drag and drop those into your space and do whatever you need to from there. And then they've been adding keyboard shortcuts, Command W will now completely close a window. Command M will minimize a window. So it's improving.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but I do think it's the future.
Someone might say it's just getting more Mac-like. Those shortcuts all are on the Mac. With windowing too, Stage Manager and windowing, I'm playing devil's advocate, but all these features are making it more Mac-like. And so if it continues down that road, gives you the things that you're hoping, Final Cut even, what is the main difference then of having the iPad as your main computer versus just using a Mac?
Simplicity. It's sometimes simplicity can be pitched as a bad thing. That the simpler something is, the less pro it is. Pro has to have all these customizations and all these features, and I completely disagree with it. Because at the end of the day, the iPad is still the iPad. It's a touch interface. I can work with it, and I can work with it with my finger. I can work with it the Apple Pencil. I can work with it a keyboard. I can work with it with a trackpad or a mouse. I can plug in an external monitor to it. I talk a lot about how the iPad is a modular computer. It goes from a tablet to a notebook to a laptop and now to a desktop computer. So that's kind of where I see the iPad going. Now, on a infinite timeline, will the Mac get iPad OS? No. But what I do see happening in an infinite timeline, and you can kind of start to see it already, Apple start to merge all of their core OSs. So iOS, iPad OS, and Mac OS. I can see those kind of end up starting to merge and become something else entirely.
Sure.
And I'm not saying this is going to be a next year thing, like 10 years down the road probably.
Sure.
But like they all become one OS, and these devices are running the same OS, and it changes based on what input you're using and stuff like that. And we kind of see that already with iPad OS 16. So one thing that's really interesting, say you have some text highlighted in Notes. In the past, you could tap on that with your finger, or you could click on it, and you would get that same menu that runs horizontally on the top.
Right.
And you have the cut, copy, paste, replace if you have like a spelling mistake, look up, things like that. Well, now with iPad OS 16, you can tap on that and get that same menu. But if you were to right-click on it, you get a traditional right-click menu, like more along the lines of something you would see in Mac OS.
Right.
So yeah, they are kind of starting to come together, and those lines are starting to become blurred. But at the end of the day, do we need three separate OSs that have to be very different from each other? Like, shouldn't the similarities kind of blur together so that way, like, hey, I'm somebody that's been using the Mac for 10 years, and somebody puts down an iPad with a Magic Keyboard in front of me, I should probably be able to figure out how to use 80 to 90% of that just because I've had Mac experience in the past.
Sure. Well, I'd be curious 10 years from now, because I know Craig Federighi multiple times has said, they are separate. We are not abandoning one or the other.
I think that was more like, is Mac OS going to get replaced, or is Mac OS going to go away? And I think they were phrasing it like the iPad is not going to replace the Mac, but I think down the road, like in 10 years, will it still be Mac, iPad, iPhone, or will it be like, hey, we have these folding devices, and you have this phone that can open up into a tablet. Oh, and now I can plug that tablet into a monitor, and I have a desktop computer.
Right.
I mean, we see these processors and CPUs and GPUs just getting faster and faster.
Right.
Look at the M2, like M1, M2, you don't need a fan for those. So, and clearly you could use those for high-end work. I've done it. A lot of other YouTubers and creative people have used those computers for high-end work.
Sure.
So I don't necessarily think, and this is like pipe dream stuff, I totally realize that. But I think on that infinite like timeline, or not even infinite timeline, in a 10, 15 year period, I do see those like big core OSs, like put TV OS and Watch OS aside, and I think Home OS is the other thing. Put those aside because those are kind of specialty things. But iOS, iPad OS, and Mac OS, I could kind of see getting combined into one thing at some point.
Sure.
And just being like, hey, it changes based on the context you are in, which would be really cool. I would be all for that.
Yeah. Which I think, it used to just be iOS. We actually just used to have two instead of three. iOS was iPad and iPhone. And I could see that at least combining in the future, because
I'm glad they broke out iOS from iPad OS, because as a big iPad user, it was there was a couple years there. It's like, okay, will this be the year the iPad gets anything? And now that
that's true.
iPad OS is like a standalone thing, we're kind of expecting something every year. Some years are lighter than others.
Right.
That's okay. Right. I have a theory about that as well, but that's a whole nother rant.
I want to know, because with iPad being your main deal, I imagine shortcuts and automations are a big part of your workflow. You even said you have a Mac kind of dedicated to some automation. So I do want to hear about some of your workflows. What are some of your shortcuts integrations or most used automations that you use with your iPad being your main deal?
Oh, I have a ton. Let me pull up my shortcuts app here.
How many? What's the total amount of shortcuts? Because I want to know from
that has been cleaned up recently.
Okay.
It's only 64. Only 64.
Oh, only 64. Oh, okay. You're doing better than me. I got 218 running over here. So
Honestly, I was pushing like 500 for a while, but I was I was part of the Mac Stories Automation April contest.
That's right.
I was the judge on that. So I had a ton of shortcuts installed, like all really good shortcuts.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, I'm not going to use these. I need to clean this up. So it was pretty bad for a while. But
if you ever want to feel better about the number that you have, just talk to Matthew Casanelli, because I think he's got over 1,000
That's literally what I was
now.
just going to say. Is my pal Matthew Casanelli, who I talk to all the time, love dearly.
Yep.
He has way too many shortcuts installed. And if you're listening, Matthew, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help.
He's been on the show 3 times. He's our resident shortcuts guy. Well, that's his shtick. That's what he does.
That is his thing. And I definitely use shortcuts quite a bit. I definitely use it for a productivity focused thing. So I have a lot of shortcuts that do things in the background for me. So for example, whenever I publish a new video, I use a service called Zapier and Pushcut to kind of watch the RSS feed for my channel, sends me a notification, and I can tap on that notification and it runs a shortcut. And what it does is it uses regular expressions to get the description of the video and formats it into a blog post, gets the links, the titles, makes it all into a nice blog post, and publishes it right to my website, so I don't have to do anything. It's really awesome. I love that one.
I use Zapier with podcasts to automate RSS. I have one podcast where every time a new episode is published to the feed, it pulls the custom artwork for that episode from the RSS, takes the description from the episode, and then just publishes to Instagram and Facebook and Twitter automatically.
Oh, nice.
RSS automations, I love it.
Oh, yeah. So much of, and I used to do a lot more. When I had a podcast back in the day, I had a lot of RSS automations when it came to that. Just like what you were doing, like pulling the episode, sharing it, and doing all that stuff. I have shortcuts that I use that I've built like custom time tracking stuff for. I've got one called Capture Cut, which is basically my way of recreating QuickNote, but for third-party notes apps.
Oh,
I have one called Money Cut, which logs all my income and its expense tracking stuff to an Airtable database that uses like the Airtable API.
Do you use focus modes along with some of these automations and schedules?
Yeah, I'm a big focus mode, and they're getting really good in iOS and iPad OS 16. They were already really good, but they're getting a lot of nice quality of life improvements.
Focus filters is going to be huge.
Focus filters will be huge. I'm really curious to see how third parties adopt those. The first party stuff is great, like the ability to I'm working on one right now because I'm self-employed now, so I work every day of the week, and I'm trying to ease up on that a little bit and at least take one day off. So I'm using the new focus filter feature to basically put in a weekend focus, and who knows when the weekend focus actually will come on that week.
Sunday from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m.
I meant like sometimes it could be Wednesday, sometimes it could be Friday, sometimes it might be Saturday, who knows. So I'm using that to turn off my work calendar, turn off my work email, turn off like all these things that's like, hey, you should not be looking at these things today. If something is on fire, certain people know how to get a hold of you in emergency ways.
Right.
Most stuff can wait a day for me. It's not the end of the world.
Sure. Yeah, I love the email account filtering for focus filters. That's going to be huge because I reflexively open the email. I've taken the mail app off my home screens. I don't have it anywhere, but reflexively, I just swipe down to enable Spotlight on my phone, and Siri just knows I want mail. And so I just open it. So to be able to shut off certain email accounts on the weekend or when I'm on vacations, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
And the custom home screen features, too, is really nice for that because I do have mail on my home screen, but not on my weekend home screen. It's not there. I don't need it. So
exactly.
It's one of those features I'm kind of surprised Apple actually made, but I'm really glad that they made it.
For sure. Before we go, I want to just ask a few questions about YouTube specifically because I saw a tweet interaction between Everyday Dad and you, and it was kind of talking about what do you choose to make for your audience? How do you pick topic, keep it interesting? And you said in this tweet that you had worked 20 plus hours on a video, but when you finished it, you hated it. And so you did not publish it. One, I'd be curious if you're willing to tell us what that video was about.
Nope.
And no, okay, it's top secret. Then how do you choose, this, I know this topic will be interesting, or this is something, is it just because you want to cover it? You're passionate about a subject at the moment? Are you following news and trying to follow those trends? Where do you go to find your topics?
honestly, I don't follow any news or trends or anything. If I did, I'd probably be a much bigger YouTuber. Honestly, I just make stuff that I am interested in. If it is so, I just published a video on mind mapping because honestly, it's something I was thinking about at the time. I was working on a big mind map for my iPad OS 16 walkthrough. Thought, hey, it's not going to be a 100,000 view video. It may not even be a 20,000 view video. But you know what? I figured a few people might find it interesting, so I made a video about that. Yeah. And honestly, that kind of rule of thumb has served me really well. Not all my videos are the most popular videos. I have some duds on the channel, but I can honestly say I'm proud of them because they're something that was interesting to me. They're videos I would watch. That video you mentioned that I deleted it because it's not a video I would watch. It was boring. It was one of those things that I wasn't making it because I hadn't made anything in a while, and I was like, I should just put out something and I was like, no. And by the time, like, I had that video practically finished, like it could have been published, like, with a few minor tweaks. And I was just like, nope, it's not a video. Like 5 months, 6 months from now, would I be proud of that video sitting on my channel? No, not really. So yeah, I'm just particular about that.
Okay. So where do you go either to watch or get ideas or for inspiration? Whether it's for iPad or just Apple in general, do you watch other channels? Where do you go for inspiration?
Usually for me, it's always about solving a problem. In the past, it's been like, for example, when I had my IT job, it was like, hey, I need to be able to remote into a whole bunch of computers. Okay, how could I do this? I found a solution. Yeah. I need to be able to control these server VMs. Found a solution. I need to be able to write code on an iPad. Not execute it, just be able to write it. Found a solution. So it's always been about problem solving for me, and that's something that's always I've enjoyed in my work. No matter what I've been doing, is finding a solution to a problem. Going back to one of the very first things we talked about, LumaFusion. Finding LumaFusion was solving a problem. I wanted to edit video on an iPad, and that was my solution to that problem. Unfortunately, there is literally no other solution since 2017. So hopefully that changes, Apple.
For sure. So when you are not in tech mode, you're not working, you're not wanting to watch tech, you want to watch something for enjoyment or just to unwind, do you watch something on YouTube? Like, are you in that F1 world now? It seems like everyone on Twitter is talking about F1, or are you doing something else?
I am all in on F1 world. F1 world is...
What happened? Why is this the thing now? What happened?
So, okay. F1, unlike a lot of sports, has a really long season. It started in like March, and will go to November. It has a ridiculously long season.
Okay.
So there's only 20 drivers, and F1 is the pinnacle of race car driving. Like, it is the best of the best go here. But there are only 20 drivers that get a seat. We just started what's called summer break. So there's basically a month where there's no racing whatsoever. And usually there's a race every other week and sometimes there's like 2 back-to-back, but usually it's every other week. But right now there's a month of no racing. And this is what the start of what's called is silly season. So silly season is when a lot of contract negotiations are happening, and teams are trying to figure out who their driver lineup will be for next year. Because sometimes you might get a driver that has a 2 or 3 year contract. Sometimes they only have a 1 year contract. One driver just signed a 5-year contract. So they're not similar at all. So what happened the other day that got Twitter just completely erupted, it happened a few days ago. A world champion driver that has been in the sport for years and years now announced he was going to retire on a Friday. On a Monday, that team already had a replacement that is another world champion driver. And that team that he left had literally found out via the press release that the team that he's going to put out. The driver did not tell him at all. So they're scrambling to find somebody and make themselves look competent. Well, they just announced without talking to this person, they have a reserve driver that basically hey, if one of our 2 drivers gets sick, because there's 10 teams, 20 drivers, each team gets 2 drivers. So if one of our 2 drivers gets sick, this guy can step in and take over. So they just announced the reserve driver will be their driver for 2023 without checking with him.
Oh, wow.
Well, then he didn't back that up for hours. There was like 2 hours where he didn't say anything, which is very unusual. Like usually it's like a timed release, like, hey, this person's gonna be our driver, and they're like, oh, hey, yeah, super excited to be your driver. Like it's like a choreographed thing.
Sure.
Well, he didn't say anything for hours and hours, and all of a sudden he puts out a tweet saying, hey, this team, they're called Alpine. Alpine made an announcement saying that I was going to be their driver for 2023. That is not the case. I will not. And
drama.
I will not be driving for them, and that was news to them. Honestly, F1 is for people that think they're too cool for soap operas. That's what it is. It's just drama. It's just drama. It's people that think they're too cool for soap operas and want like V6 hybrid, like torqued up engines that go 200 miles an hour.
I've heard John Gruber and on the talk show talk about baseball many times. And if you love baseball, you're either into the stats or you're either into the drama. And so it sounds like the F1 world has the drama.
Oh, but we have the drama, but we also have the stats, because F1 is not just drama and drivers. It's also engineering, because all teams have to build their own car. It is called engineering insanity. It's amazing. And as a nerd, as a science geek, I absolutely love it. Like everything about this sport just speaks to me, because I'm not athletic. I was never the cool athletic kid, but oh boy, do I love a good engine and good engineering. Oh, yeah. I grew up redneck. I can drive me just about anything.
Did you grow up in the South?
No. But I grew up. I lived in Texas for 4 years when I was a kid, but where I'm born and raised mostly is the dead center of California, which is the agriculture capital of the world, or one of the agriculture capitals of the world. Wow. Depends on who you ask, but it's redneck central. I didn't even by California standard, it's redneck central.
Did this F1 thing just happen recently? I feel like I had never heard a word about it.
What happened is there was a documentary on Netflix called Drive to Survive, and it's a great starting point for anyone that's kind of curious about it. Like, if you get through the first couple episodes of Drive to Survive, you will love Formula One. If you watch the first episode and be like, nah, not for me, totally get it. Like, just, it's understand. I watched it and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want. This is everything that I want. This is I was never a sports person. I could care less about that. But I'm like, this isn't throw a ball, catch a ball thing. This is drive a car at 200 miles an hour and try not to honestly die. It's and they're all the engineering, the fact that they can a car can pull up and they can change the tires in just over 2 seconds is amazing.
That's amazing.
I mean, I just went and got tires changed a couple months ago, and it was 3 hours. I'm like, what the heck?
There's no pit crew at that mechanic. No,
I know. I'm like, these guys did it in 2.3 seconds over the weekend, and I'm sitting here for on hour 3, and I'm like, come on, guys, what's going on?
So F1, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, lightning round as we close up, because you are a Mac guy. You started as a Mac guy. Here's my James Lipton style closing here. At what speed do you listen to podcasts?
Oh, okay. 1.25 with smart speed on.
Okay, so you use Overcast to listen, I assume.
Yes, yeah, I do.
Okay,
I tried going back to the Apple Podcast app over the summer. I tried to use the Apple default app so I can talk about it and stuff. I can't do the Apple Podcast app because it doesn't have smart speed. It drives.
Yeah.
I got to meet some podcasters that I've listened to for years at WWDC, and talking to them in person, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't realize how slow you talk. And I'm sure people have said that about me because they'll watch YouTube videos at 1.5 or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. When you're using a Mac, mouse or trackpad?
Trackpad, but only because that's where all the gestures are. I do prefer a mouse.
Okay. Natural scrolling or unnatural on your Mac?
Whatever the default one is. Is that natural scrolling?
It's natural now.
Okay. Yeah. I
matches touch devices.
Yeah. I was trying to for a long time, I didn't want to do it, mostly because I had a job where I was using a Windows computer, a Mac, and all that other stuff. Right. But a few years into not needing a Windows computer, I just was like, okay, I'll just go all in on natural scrolling.
What is your default web browser on the Mac?
Safari.
Actually, I would have assumed because iPad, yeah.
It's just easiest.
Tab groups.
Yeah, tab groups are amazing.
Yeah.
On the iPad, it doesn't really matter because everything has to use WebKit still.
Right, exactly.
Safari's got all the privacy stuff. I don't trust Google.
Yep.
Yes, I'm a YouTuber. I realize the irony.
Well, that's different, though, than using it for like all your communication and all your web
Exactly.
browsing and all that kind of stuff. So I totally get it.
I don't stay signed in.
Okay. What's your task app of choice?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question there. Depends on what's happening. Right now it's reminders, but that's just because, like I said, I'm using Apple's default apps over the summer. But if I could only have one, I would go with Things 3.
Yep. I love Things. That's mine too.
That's fantastic.
Final question. On your Mac, what is your dock position? Do you auto hide and Genie or scaling effect?
Okay, so it's left, not auto hide, and it's big enough so that Genie or scaling doesn't actually matter because I have enough stuff in it.
Yeah, right.
So Genie or scaling, I don't even actually know which one it is. It's on Genie technically, but like it doesn't
Okay.
do anything. But that will probably change with Ventura because Stage Manager puts the stuff on the left side.
Right.
So I was a little bummed about that. I was hoping there would be a feature that would let me move the stages over to the right side.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Probably have to move the dock to the right.
I was a left dock guy forever. And then when I started using universal control with my iPad, I realized it was getting in the way because if I wanted an iPad on the left or the right, it was annoying to have to go through the dock. And then, if you're trying to drag something. So I've transitioned now dock at the bottom. Wasn't my preference for many years, but I've gone
at
to
the
the
bottom. I know all the traditional
either.
Mac people are like, it must be at the bottom. Steve Jobs willed it that way. I'm like, okay.
No. I like it on the side.
I think it's just better on the side. Like, it's out of the way. Like, I like that. I keep my iPad on the right for universal control. So when I am using my Mac, I love universal control. Great feature. So I keep my iPad on the right. So I don't have that issue. But I didn't think about that with Ventura coming up. I may end up having to be a bottom dock person. Oh, Ventura. What are you doing to me? Ventura isn't even a nice place. Why did Apple name it that? I'm from California. Like, Ventura is not, like, if I'm, like, planning my California vacation, Ventura is not on that list.
Really, my I keep predicting this every year. I imagine eventually I have to be right, unless they totally change. But El Dorado, I'm waiting for macOS El Dorado. They've done L names in the past. They've had El Capitan.
Yeah, well, they did El Capitan.
Yeah.
I love that one because I'm only like hour and a half, 15 minutes away from Yosemite. So like that whole Yosemite, El Cap, Sierra, High Sierra one, I was like, these are mine.
Yes.
These are my releases.
That's fun. Well, Christopher, thanks so much for joining us. We'll put links to your YouTube channel and the untitled.site, of course, in the show notes. Is there anything else you'd like to direct people to?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Well, thanks again, Chris. And again, listeners, check all the links in the show notes. You can follow, subscribe to him on YouTube. Amazing iPad content. And you can, of course, visit the untitled.site to find all his other stuff. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you.